VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Thank you for joining us on Crosstalk today. And today, a visit back to the Middle East where tensions are high. Iran has refused to relent from their nuclear aspirations and also has refused to turn from their hatred and terroristic ways toward Israel and toward the United States. Meanwhile, a blockade continues in the Strait of Hormuz with ships not allowed in or out from Iranian ports. The United States is using minesweepers to mitigate the mines placed in the waterway, and it's estimated that this blockade is costing Iran some $435 million a day. And with this blockade, Iran could run out of space to store the oil. Mixed news coming out on whether or not China is or will provide weaponry to Iran for its battle against Israel and the United States. Well, yesterday also a historic summit in Washington, D.C. between Israel and Lebanon seeking to broker peace. Vice President Vance says the president wants to make a grand bargain with Iran. And meanwhile, Islam has obtained another ally in the name of Tucker Carlson, who has been turning more anti-Jewish and more pro-Islam. Recently, he even demanded that the U.S. share world power with China. A Muslim man also discharged in a $500 million California warehouse fire, and Congressman Chip Roy has introduced legislation to designate CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Affairs, as a terrorist entity. Well, got a lot on the plate today, and joining us to discuss this and related matters, we welcome back Shahram Hadian. Shahram is founder of the Truth and Love Project. A bit about his background: he is a Christian pastor, but he is a former Muslim. He was born in Iran and came to the United States of America in 1978 to escape a very oppressive Islamic regime. And it was in the States here in 1999 that he committed his life to Jesus Christ. He does have a very extensive background in many different fields: a pastor, former police officer, a teacher, coach, servant leader in his community, ran for governor in the state of Washington. And friends, we've got a lot to pack together today. Shahram, thanks for joining us.
Jim, thank you so much. Great to be back with you on the program, as always.
So let's begin with Israel. I mean, there is presently a 2-week ceasefire that soon will come to an end. It's a ceasefire being held together by a thread. The Strait of Hormuz closed, and Iran refuses to relent from their nuclear aspirations. Shahram, just give us your assessment on what's going on at this time.
Well, the behavior of the Iranian regime, it should be no surprise to any person. We've talked about this, that within Islam, the permissibility of them invoking deception, especially with the concept of a ceasefire or a treaty when they're at their weakest point. You know, the term is called hudna, Hudna, and it basically is a false truce. It's a false treaty, knowing that they're going to break it, knowing that they're just buying time. So nobody, including in this administration, should believe one word that comes out of the mouths of these IRGC leaders now, because really Iran is now under a military coup. Their theocratic system is basically collapsed, but they're under now a military coup because the IRGC predominantly is running the country. Yes, the president of Iran, Pezeshkian, is there. Yes, this guy Ghalibaf, who's the member of the head of parliament, is there. But it's the IRGC leadership that is really running things right now, and they're desperate. I don't know if you saw some of the images. They're even using children at checkpoints. And this is just, barbaric that they would do such a thing. But I don't see, Jim, I mean, again, I people ask me all the time, and I said, well, what is the expectation? What are we trying to accomplish? Because the idea that we can somehow broker peace, find common ground with this regime, or that they would stop wanting to have a nuclear weapon. Look, their stated purpose under their Islamic Shia eschatology is they must wipe Israel off the face of the planet. The Jews cannot be in that land. They believe it belongs to them. They believe that their Islamic Messiah is going to go back to Jerusalem. And the only way to do that is to have a nuclear weapon and blow them off. So nothing is going to change. We need to pray for this thing to collapse and for there to be complete end to this regime.
So when you talk about collapse, what will cause that? Will the blockade cause this? The backup of the oil? I mean, that we're seeing is $435 million a day. It's costing the nation of Iran to have this blockade coming into their ports. What will cause that collapse to take place, in your opinion?
Well, doing what the U.S. and Israel has already done to this point, obviously targeting all of the mechanisms of repression. They're so desperate, as I said, they're using children. They're so desperate that they continue to bring in outside militias. So that's all signs that their infrastructure of repression, meaning controlling the Iranian people, is collapsing. But yes, I think this blockade should have happened from the beginning. I think that the blockade should have been something that the U.S. should have done from the very beginning, because not only is it hurting Iran, it's hurting China, it's hurting Russia, it's hurting the Arab nations around with the blockade, and with Iran's finances being cut off, which is going to cut off their funding. So that's just, to me, that's something that should have happened. And the Iranian people themselves, they've prepared for this, Jim. They knew that there was going to be a hard road, both with the threat of, obviously, the bombs falling, but also with further economic hardship. I mean, they've been under economic hardship for years now, unbelievable economic hardship. But yes, this is what they're waiting for, is their financial infrastructure's got to collapse. And obviously I pray, I personally, I don't trust Vance or Witkoff or Jared Kushner as they're negotiating, because you can't make a deal with these demonically inspired individuals. Cut off their money. I said that from the very beginning. Cut off their money. Cut off their allies. I don't think China is going to go beyond what they're claiming they're doing, which is sending maybe some arms covertly into Iran. I think if they get more directly involved, it's not going to go well for them. And just cut off the money. You cut off the money, it creates so much ripple effect to hasten the collapse.
Yeah. So
and the support from other countries.
Okay. So if you cut off the money, though, is that going to cause the IRGC to collapse? I mean, I wonder how does one negotiate with them? Because this IRGC, who you said is really in a military coup right now, they're the ones who carried out the will of the Ayatollah. They're the ones that turned their weapons on Iranian citizens, and mass devastation and destruction against Israel. They've been part of the very hub of this.
Yes, the cut off their financing, you'll see the defections, because once they cannot look, a lot of the lower member people of the IRGC that don't necessarily have their hands dripping with the blood of the Iranian people, they're just getting a paycheck. And I believe that when they can't get paid, they're going to defect. They're going to very quickly, and that's what the Crown Prince, Reza Pahlavi, has been calling for. He continues to call for the defections from the IRGC, to some extent what's called the Basij, which is sort of the morality police, but really the IRGC is the mechanism right now. And we have to remember, Iran set up a decentralized structure for this very purpose, that they were going to be attacked. They set up a decentralized structure, meaning individual IRGC leaders are making individual decisions. So that also, yes, it makes it decentralized for them, but it also makes it easier for them to defect if they're decentralized, because that means that you can then potentially reach individual IRGC leadership in parts of the country and have them stop what they're doing inside with the people of Iran. That's what Reza Pahlavi has been calling for. The economic pressure he's been calling for from the very beginning. We've been calling for that, but also the defections and stopping the lifeline. I'm not surprised China is going to try to give Iran some sort of a lifeline, or maybe Russia, maybe Turkey. But why is the United States continuing to say they want to make a deal? They're lying. They're lying. They open their mouths, lies come out. They open their mouths, they're deceiving. They're never going to give up their ambitions, because it is their theological obligation. Just like we would say we must continue the Great Commission until Christ comes, they must continue what they're doing. It will never stop. You have to cut it off. and pray that then at some point. And by the way, the Iranian people are just saying, look, we're waiting for the instructions either from Reza Pahlavi or the United States or Israel to go back into the streets. They're ready to go back into the streets.
Wow.
They've just been waiting because they've been told wait. And that's another factor here that we're not seeing yet.
Shahram, what is this blockade doing in regard to relationship with other nations? I see the Saudis are urging the U.S. to drop the blockade. Other countries have said that, and European countries have, they've gone in opposition to the United States on this, and yet you're saying the blockade should have been done earlier and tighten the noose even further, so to speak, of the Strait of Hormuz there. Will this turn other nations against the United States?
I mean, possibly temporarily, because as I mentioned, the Arab Gulf states, they can't function unless they have that oil revenue that's going through that strait. Whereas we are not as dependent on it. The reason our gas prices have gone up is not because we're dependent on the oil, it's because of the gouging and because of the fact that they just can't. They see chaos and they raise the prices. There's no reason why our gas prices should have gone this high. But if you look at Qatar, the majority of their funding that comes from oil revenue goes through that strait. If you look at, to some extent, Saudi Arabia, the Arab Emirates, you look at Kuwait. So, yeah, they're very much dependent. And, of course, Western Europe is very much dependent on this oil that's coming. So does it hurt them in the short term? Yes. Is it going to make them mad at the United States? Yes. But if you're asking me what do we need to do to cut the head off the snake, so to speak, and end this quicker, it is economic. I said it from the very beginning. I'll say it now. It must have been, yes, the military component is good, but it was the economic. I wanted the economic in this type of way from the very beginning, and I just hope that they continue it until this thing collapses. I think I think that they will renew their friendship, the United States, with these countries, because they're dependent on us. We're not dependent on Europe, as we've seen with the talk about NATO not helping us, and we're certainly not dependent now under Trump on oil revenue from OPEC. We can drill, we can hit our own resources. We don't need them, they need us. And so I think stay the course.
Okay, and just on a side note, people are asking, well, if we don't need them, we don't need that oil, why are our oil prices rising so much?
That was my point, is that they shouldn't be. This is gouging. This is because they can. There's no actual reason why we could not have, first of all, done what the president did sooner, which is to bring in our reserves. But the percentage of oil that we get from the Strait is minimal compared to the percentage of oil that the Chinese get, the Russians to some extent. Of course, they have their own pipeline as well. And then the Arab nations, as I already mentioned. They're the ones who are desperate and dependent on this flow. And as you said, of course, the Iranians are desperate to sell the oil.
Right.
So if you can't get the oil out, you can't sell it.
Right.
So there's no reason the prices should have gone up.
Shahram Hadian with us today here on Crosstalk. Our topic, Iran, Israel, and Islam. And friends, we'll be discussing more, not only what's happening in the Middle East, but what's happening here in the United States as well on these related matters. We'll be back in 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY American Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, Noah's Ark explorer from the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, can you tell us anything new about the search for Noah's Ark?
Chris, the search for Noah's Ark is always on the minds of that set of people that have Ark fever, and I'm one of them. I've been involved in the search for Noah's Ark since 1970 and have led numerous expeditions to Mount Ararat. In the last 15 years or so, hardly anybody has legally been on Mount Ararat. We have, however, been able to search from satellite photography, but with no firm indication that the Ark has been found. The Bible does not predict that the Ark will be found, so we don't have that to look to, but we do have a lot of evidence. Hundreds of people claim to have seen the Ark, but we just don't have any proof. A lot of smoke, but no fire. The Ark did exist, that we're told back in Genesis, but does it exist today? Maybe.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. For more information, you can find us on the web at www.icr.org.
Iran, Israel, and Islam. Our topic today here on Crosstalk. Shahram Hadian is our guest. Shahram is from Iran, escaped from Iran in 1978, came here to the United States where he found Jesus Christ as his Savior. We praise God for that. Reviewing right now what's going on in the Middle East, and Shahram is saying today the way that we're going to see victory is to continue the chokehold on their economy and to withhold, their commerce from taking place. The answer is not sending pallet loads of U.S. currency to Iran like we saw under the Obama administration. Shahram, just go back just a little bit. I'm seeing a number of mixed stories on China about supplying weaponry, even a story that came out implying that China was going to be preparing missiles for use by Iran, but your sources are indicating that likely not the case?
I think that what I'm hearing, what I've been told is that there may be limited resources just because there's a mutual compact between China and Iran. They signed this a few years back, but China's got to be very careful in having their hands blatantly and openly on missiles that would then rain down potentially on Israel, on U.S. troops, on U.S. warships, because now that's a declaration of war. So I honestly don't believe in what I'm being told, that it's anything but small levels just to fulfill that mutual aid. And I think that will be it. The quicker these other regions understand that this regime is not going to survive, the quicker they're going to back off. And that's why I'm saying we got to work in the opposite direction of what it seems like, because the president keeps sending mixed signals, they won't make a deal. It's almost over. There's a deal. There's not a deal. This is games. They buy this delay, and then they try to get help and regroup. And that's the pressure that's got to be on there. There is, I got to say this, there is no moderate element in this regime. It doesn't matter if it's Ghalibaf or Pezeshkian or Mousavi or any of the people that are left alive. There is no moderate element. They're not Persians. These are Arabs or Indians and Pakistanis that are running Iran. The Persian people will never ever tolerate. And by the way, if this regime stays in power to whatever extent, whatever we saw in the massacres, it'll pale in comparison to what they do to the people. Wow. So this is why we got to pray that it could just die and just go away and let the people rise up there with Reza Pahlavi. We're
going to hit another topic that's going on in all of this, but we just mentioned China, and I notice it's being reported they've doubled their warships around Taiwan, and that's not a good signal either, is it?
It's not a good signal because they think we're distracted. They think that because so much of our efforts are there. This is why I'm saying the blockade is important, because though they are doing that, they will not be able to effectively do what they're doing with all their those warships, all their assets, right? That requires what? Fuel. It requires oil. It requires their economy is heavily dependent on the Strait of Hormuz. So this blockade could potentially also hinder their ability to do what they have wanted to do in Taiwan for a number of years. But yes, it's they probably think we're distracted. Hey, this is the time to begin to move forward. And I just hope that, again, we stray the course, not get distracted by that. I think that they will the hardest thing that will hit their economy is also financial. That's our biggest stick, is to use the financial ability. And as you said, they're clearing the mines. I said from the very beginning the U.S. should have already taken over the Strait of Hormuz. I think that this should have taken that strait. I do think that if they're going to put any troops on the ground, it should be on Karg Island there, which over 90% of the oil production in Iran is there on that island, and just take it over. And now it's heavily fortified around, so they're going to have to continue to maybe be strategic. But, boy, you want to talk about changing the world order very quickly,
Yeah.
take over the Strait of Hormuz, and see what happens.
Wow. Well, here's a head-scratcher, Shahram. Just recently, there are a number of countries, including the UK, France, Canada, Australia, voting against the United States to secure seats for Iran and other authoritarian regimes to some influential UN bodies. I mean, this just does not make sense, does it?
Well, it makes sense in the sense of the UN is so corrupt. The UN seems to go against, think about all of the anti-Israel resolutions that have come out of the UN, even after October 7, 2023, when Israel was the one that's attacked. We have to remember the Organization of Islamic Cooperation really is the largest voting bloc in the United Nations. So the Muslim countries really run that, and the Europeans are beholden to them. That's the point I was trying to make earlier. Mm-hmm. So I'm not surprised that we're seeing what we're seeing from NATO. Those of us who've been saying that we should pull out of NATO and let them be on their own. You don't want to support us? Fine. Good luck. You're on your own.
Yeah.
We're not going to come to your rescue either. Mm-hmm. And the UK, which has become so Islamized, France, which has become so Islamized, Western European nations, they're afraid of the Muslim population. So that's part of, I think, what's driving this is that they're not going to support the United States and taking down Iran, because a free Iran is an Islamic free Iran. I think I said that when I was on with you last time, that a free Iran means Islamic free. And, of course, not only those Western European nations wouldn't, their Muslim population wouldn't support that. That's why you're having all these pro-Iran rallies in the UK or France, because they're supporting the regime rather than coming out and supporting the massacre of the Iranian people, because they're scared of their Muslim population, because they wield so much influence and threats in those Western European nations. So personally, I could care less about how they feel or what they think, and I think we have to do what's in the best interest of the United States long term, and that is to get rid of this regime.
Hungary has just elected new leadership. Hungary has been a staunch ally of Israel. What does this mean for Israel and really the advancement of Islam?
That's a perplexing one, because I read an article yesterday, Jim, that was saying that the guy that was elected, who was part of Orban's government, apparently is more conservative. So it's hard to know that one right there, whether Hungary has moved in the direction of the socialist globalists, which is the most of, the rest of Europe, in a more conservative direction.
Okay.
And so that's still, I think, something we're going to have to see, because there, as the Bible prophesies, we know that there's not going to be a lot of allies of Israel, or maybe any, left in the in the last days.
Right.
And that goes along with, unfortunately, the United States and all these Groyper activity that we see from all these anti-Semites within the political right now.
Another topic here, at the same time, we've got Israel has been fighting against Hezbollah, and yesterday a summit in D.C. to try and broker peace between Israel and Lebanon. Again, it's a very tenuous situation there. Give me your comments on that, if you would.
We need the Lebanese government, we need the Lebanese people to finally decide they're done with the influence of Hezbollah in their nation, if they want to be a proactive neighbor to Israel. How can you fault Israel when you have a direct Iranian regime proxy up in their northern border? I think what they should do, and people would probably call me a colonialist or a land grabber, but I think what they should do is march and take over part of southern Lebanon as a buffer zone, like they had to do in Syria, to give them a little bit of buffer, because as long as Hezbollah is there, there will be no peace. And this is what most people do not understand, is that you cannot make peace with the devil. You cannot make peace with these devilish ideologies. I don't see how Lebanon can function if Hezbollah is the predominant force. They have elements within Lebanon that are not supportive of Hezbollah. Those elements need to rise up. The people need to rise up there and say, we reject this Islamic jihadist group here and their governance, and we're done with it. But again, how do you do that without there being some military intervention when you have people that want to kill you? I don't. It's an impossibility. Yeah. Israel has no choice but to create some sort of a buffer zone, in my opinion.
Shahram Hadian is with us today, and Shahram, your ministry website, that's tilministry.com, correct? tilministry.com?
Yes, sir. tilministry.com for Truth and Love.
Truth and Love. And by the way, you're going to be speaking. Some of our listeners in Pennsylvania have access to hear you, and you actually travel across the country.
I do. Traveling more so this year. Just got back from Texas again, where the people in Texas are trying to wake up to what's going on there with the Islamic takeover. But yeah, we're going to be this coming weekend, April 18th, Saturday, Morning Star, Quakertown, the church. They're having a conference.
Okay.
Myself and a gentleman from Australia who's actually from Egypt, not Usama Datbak, our friend, but he's from Egypt, and we're going to be speaking at the conference there. They can go to Morning Star Fellowship, Quakertown, if they want to get information on the conference. It's 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. there in Quakertown, Pennsylvania.
Okay, so that's this Saturday for those of you in the Pennsylvania area. Shahram, we're going to segue now to talk about Islam, and surprisingly to some, it seems they found a new ally in the name of one Tucker Carlson. What's going on? Evidently, he's issued a statement now talking about how Islam and Muslims love Jesus.
Yeah, this is to us who've been following this kind of movement, it's not a surprise, because what we continue to see is that when these individuals get Israel wrong, when they get to the point where they turn on God's word, they begin to attack Israel, attack the Jewish people, become anti-Semitic in their spirit. They also become very pro-Muslim. And you know, we've heard Tucker talk about how wonderful Doha, Qatar is, and he's bought a house there, and he thinks that Sharia is not that bad, you know, the Islamic law or penal code, how, you know, they have no rape or crime in Dubai, which are all preposterous things. But then he comes out this week, and I sent you the screenshot, I texted you the screenshot,
yeah,
and says the following about Jesus. And I don't know if we want to, you know, read his exact words or not, because I don't want to take the man out of context.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, Jim, I have said, and I was on with Brandon last night, we did a show on this, and I have said for a number of weeks now that it is looking to me like it's possible that Tucker may have already converted to Islam. And that's a bold statement, right? That's a huge statement, because people say, oh, he's a Christian, he's whatever. But when you say, and this is what he said, the people in charge don't want you to know this, but Muslims love Jesus. Islam reveres him as a major prophet and messenger of the Lord, believes he performed miracles, and states that he will return to earth to defeat the Antichrist. Mm-hmm. That's why Donald Trump's painting depicting himself as the son of God offended the president of Iran. It was an attack on his religion as well as Christianity. And he's talking about Masoud Pezeshkian, which is ridiculous. So when we come back from the break, if you want, I can break this down and tell you why he is apostate if he is a Christian.
We will do that right after the break. Shahram Hadian with us. We'll also talk about some other matters going on pertaining to Islam here in the United States. A Muslim set fire to a California warehouse, $500 million in damage. Back in a minute. This is Crosstalk.
Did you know in 2006, Keith Ellison became the first Muslim elected to the U.S. Congress? He took his oath of office on a Quran. Is one's duty to uphold the Constitution compatible with the teachings of Islam? Most Americans know little about the Quran, who wrote it, and how Islam spread. Following Muhammad's death, the followers of Islam went on a mission to conquer many nations. Islam has affected the Western world from history past to the current headlines. Historian Bill Federer has documented his research in the captivating book, What Every American Needs to Know About the Quran. As Islam advances across our country, this book is a wake-up call for every American. Copies of this book are available for a donation of $20 to VCY. Call 1-800 1-800-729-9829. 1-800-729-9829.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Shahram Hadian is our guest today on the broadcast. And friends, our topic today is Iran, Israel, and Islam. And focusing right now on the Islam portion, we were just talking about really a new ally and really speaking consistently now in favor of Islam. And matter of fact, Tucker Carlson recently indicated that the U.S. should share power with China, world power with China. And the U.S., needs to surrender certain things over to China and come together in a co-fashion and do things together. Well, Tucker has also come out as an ally for Islam. And Shahram, you were just beginning here before the break to get into some of the details, and we'll have you do that. By the way, friends, our guest website today is TIL Ministry. That stands for Truth and Love, TILministry.com. So, Shahram, what about Tucker?
Well, for those of you, I was just mentioning to you during the break, for those of you who want to have some information of how to refute this type of thing, because I think that with the level of influence that Tucker has, with the level of influence that some of these social media folks have, with young people, with the younger generation, it is so important for us to be apologetically ready to defend this. So there's a document. If they just go to tilministry.com / and then the word opposites, they can find a document that I did, 2 pages, a front and back, that says polar opposites, describing the true biblical Jesus of the Bible versus the false Jesus or Isa of the Quran. So let me break down what Tucker said here. Okay, do Muslims love Jesus? Yes, they love their version of Jesus. Do they revere him as a major prophet? Yes, but you have to understand that according to the Quran, Jesus came to be a forerunner for Muhammad. So Jesus didn't come in the Quran, their version, to give revelation to himself as the divine Son of God, God in the flesh, the Savior, the Messiah of the world, who has come to suffer and become sin, who knew no sin. Their Jesus is only a prophet. According to the Quran, he is created by Allah just like every other man. According to the Quran, he is not divine in any way, shape, or form. According to the Quran, he is not the Son of God, because God, or their version of God, Allah, doesn't have a son. And according to the Quran, most importantly, Isa was never, ever crucified. This is in the 4th chapter. That Allah, being that he didn't want the Jews to kill Isa, made it look like, created a deception, made it look like somebody else, or made it look like Jesus, but somebody else, one of his followers, and some translators believe it was Judas, made it look like Jesus, put that person on the cross, and Isa never died, was taken to heaven, and he's coming back. And then when he says, notice he says he's the messenger of the Lord, not that he is Lord. And then he says that he's going to come defeat the Antichrist. Well, how come Tucker doesn't know that according to Islam, the Antichrist is the Jesus of the Bible? They call him Al-Masih ad-Dajjal, the false Messiah.
Wow.
Does Tucker know that? Does Tucker know that their fake Jesus is going to come back supposedly and destroy the true Jesus? So this is what a generation is being led astray, and now we are getting our theology from Tucker Carlson, and he's bragging on the Muslim Jesus. Well, if you believe in the Muslim Jesus, Jim, you are denouncing the biblical Jesus. Mm-hmm. You are denying the biblical Jesus. You're denying his deity, the Trinity, sonship, the author of life. He obviously came and suffered and was crucified, buried, raised from the dead, ascended to heaven, coming back as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. We deny all of that. And if we deny all of that, doesn't the Bible say that you are no longer you can no longer claim to be a Christian, because you now have denied Jesus before man, and Jesus will deny you before the Father. So this is of serious nature, of the most serious nature that one can anticipate. If Tucker is a Christian, he just became an apostate.
Friends, Shahram Hadian with us here today, and talking about this latest matter here with Tucker Carlson and some of his recent statements on this. Can I encourage you, friends, go to Shahram's website, TIL Ministry, TILministry.com/opposites, and then you will see it's just a couple-page document that you can download, and then you've got the comparison, Christianity versus Islam, the Bible versus the Quran, the biblical Jesus versus the Islamic Isa, the God in the flesh and one who is only a messenger, and on it goes through some very important opposites, contrasts between the biblical Jesus and that which is another, a false Jesus, okay? Another gospel, as Paul said, if you will, in the book of Galatians, and warned about that. Again, that's tilministry.com/opposites. And we need to point out here, Shahram, that Tucker has a lot of conservative followers who just lay in wait of his every word.
Yes, absolutely, especially because those conservatives within the political right and even the spiritual church within the church,
yes,
who are already let's say, like last time when I was on Brandon, we were talking about that, the Vatican, the Catholic Church, promoting the idea back from 1964 that Muslims are a faith, that Muslims are believers, that they're of salvation, promoting the concept that there has been replacement of Israel, that they support replacement theology, that the Catholic Church has replaced Israel, just like many Christians today who are in that camp of replacement or covenantal theology, where they believe that Israel has been replaced or superseded by the church. Those who are already in that camp, who've already been following the likes of Tucker Candace, now, what are they going to do? Oh, Islam is really good. And oh, by the way, Islam loves Jesus too. In fact, I was telling you this in the break. They're better than the Jews because the Jews don't even say the name of Jesus. They hate Jesus. At least the Muslims love Jesus. So you see, the Muslims are better than the Jews. And this just feeds into the anti-Semitic spirit of hatred that is already on this planet. And sadly, remember, Tucker Carlson's son works for Vice President J.D. Vance. There is an element of this on the political right that is very dangerous. We call them the Groypers because this is kind of like the Nick Fuenteses of the world, where they're vehemently, they claim America first, but they're vehemently anti-Semitic and believe that there should be no existence of the nation of Israel. Well, that's why he's quoting Pezeshkian in Iran. Why would Tucker Carlson be so worried about the Iranian president, who these people have blood on their hands? I mean, they've massacred tens of thousands of their own people just in the last few months, and they continue to accelerate their daily executions of young people in Iran. Why would this has Tucker become an enemy of America now? Should we treat Tucker the same we would treat as Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and these people that hate America? So this has got to be challenged. Thank you for covering this today on the program. And I'm very concerned for the young people, the young generation that is following, like you said, with bated, like right, almost like on his every word. They can't wait until Tucker comes on and attack. Did you see, by the way, and I don't know, I know we didn't set this up, but was it last week before? He had some guy on his program. I just saw the clip of it where this guy was supposed to be a Christian, and he was claiming that Christianity fits best with socialism and not with capitalism because Jesus ultimately was promoting socialism. This is the kind of stuff that the young generation is being subjected to, and it's very concerning.
Shahram Hadian with us today, and also looking here stateside, Shahram, article just came out from the Geller Report just days ago. A man from Harlem, New York, making serious threats against the Jewish community in New York, saying he will kill Jewish kids if he sees them. He plans to attack synagogues. And then to the other end of the country, over in California, where a Muslim man just charged in a $500 million California warehouse fire, and officials right now are just kind of scratching their head on this. Matter of fact, the San Bernardino County District Attorney, Jason Anderson, said, quote, "Arson to me is a real head scratcher. I don't understand why anybody or somebody who is suspected of arson does something where they can get no value out of it other than to displace people from their jobs, to ruin commerce, to get in in the way of labor, to put people in physical harm. We want to be certain, at least for our residents, as sensitive as we are to arson in this county, particularly Southern Cal, that our crimes are taken very, very serious. Head scratch, why would somebody do this?
Well, they by his statement, he's failing to understand that these aren't crimes. This was an act of jihad. This was an act of warfare. Does San Bernardino forget? Did they forget Tafshin Malik and the couple that killed, was it 14 people right there in San Bernardino that were here on their visas? Yes, they have no clue that the goal of Islam is to destabilize the nations that they go into. This is what they do in the lower house. They destabilize. And part of that is to ultimately attack infrastructures and to attack the powers to be. So that should be no surprise if anybody understands Islam, that they engage in multiple ways of jihad. Not every jihad is violent. There's jihad of the sword, jihad of the pen, jihad of lawfare, jihad of the mouth, the tongue, what the Quran says. But the goal of jihad is to establish Islam through whatever means necessary. The other thing we shouldn't be surprised about is that we shouldn't be surprised about the massive rise of anti-Semitism and violence against Jews in New York City. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've seen this almost 200% uptick since Mamdani got elected. And he has very boldly come out and said that not only is he a Democrat socialist, but he's a devout Muslim, and of course took his oath on the Quran January 1st of this year with Latifah James there. So this is what we're voting for. Mm-hmm. And when the Church of Jesus Christ doesn't stand up, doesn't speak out, doesn't engage our civil government and standing for righteousness in our nation, somebody will fill in the gap. So it's either the leftists, it's either the red side of that axis, the socialists and the Marxists and communists, or it's the green, Islam. And we got to understand they are very politically involved, but they also will continue to have individuals carry out these type of attacks, unfortunately. And it's easy for them to say, oh, well, that doesn't represent Islam. No, it does represent Islam. It's just a tactic that is there employing it to get to the control, to get to the upper house, what we call the upper house, which is Dar al-Islam, the house of surrender. That's why, remember I said earlier, Jim, that's why the European governments are afraid of their own Muslim population. Mm-hmm. They're not afraid of their Muslim population because there's so many of them. They're afraid because of these type of attacks. Right. Because they know the Muslims will burn down the UK or burn down France or burn down the Netherlands or Belgium or Norway or Germany if they push too hard on Islam. Just like this regime in Iran, if they had their way, they would burn down Iran before they would ever give it up.
And friends, this is why Congressman Chip Roy has introduced a legislation now to designate CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, as a terrorist entity. Just introduced that days ago when the United States Congress. Will get a quick comment on our guest on that right after the break. But friends, keep in mind, just a few days from today, the 11th National Muslim Advocacy Day will be held on Capitol Hill, supported by CAIR and the USSCMO. April 21 and make that April 20th and 21st in Washington, D.C. Legislation to treat them as a terrorist organization. And here we have a Muslim Advocacy Day going to the U.S. Capitol on Capitol Hill. We'll be back in 1 minute. By the way, our phone number is open, 800-733-9829. We'll be right back.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. Well, many online are upset, and rightfully so, about an image that President Trump put out that, as the media's calling it, looked like a Christ-like figure, putting his hand on the forehead of a man, apparently to heal him. Was it meant to be an image of someone healing the nation, President Trump healing the nation, anointing with oil? I don't know. It wasn't well advised, but he's now pulled it. But the bigger point to me is many of the Catholics online and even Christians in the Protestant world that are having a fit. Yet where are they in calling out Pope Leo, which I guess is how this all started with an argument between the two men? Where are they at calling out Pope Leo and the leaders of the Vatican or their local priest who believes that the Pope is the Holy Father or the Vicar of Christ on earth, or that priests can forgive or absolve sins, or the Eucharist calling down Christ into the wafer to be slaughtered over and over again. Where is their condemnation of this heresy? I'm Brandon House.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. Friends, don't just think, oh, that's just happening over the Middle East. Oh, that's just happening in the UK. Friends, it's happening here in the United States. Gave just a couple brief examples. We could spend hours on this program talking about more. But here we have Chip Roy just introducing legislation designating the Hamas-linked CARE as a terrorist entity. Meanwhile, CARE is engaged in a Muslim Advocacy Day along with other Islamic groups, April 20th and 21st, 2026 in Washington, D.C. Shahram, your thoughts?
Good idea by Chip Roy. He's spearheading the Sharia Free Caucus, which now amazingly, Jim, has 63 members of Congress, over 25 states. So thank God that there's an awakening happening there on what Islam is, Sharia. But yeah, I mean, the problem with this is that, nothing's been done federally to deal with the Brotherhood and CARE. The two states that have done something, Texas and Florida, you need to have an enforcement mechanism. Florida has done a better job because they just passed legislation to back the governor's executive order to go after CARE. But I think everybody should take Chip. By the way, we took Chip Roy's statement there and the bill that he's proposing, and we've actually written it up for our state level here in Tennessee, and we're presenting it to one of our legislators here this week to do the same thing. So I would encourage people, print it out, get it to your legislators, if not this year, next year. Every state that should be designating the Brotherhood and CARE as foreign terrorist organizations, so they can't come and do these Muslim advocacy days you're talking about with the USCMO, the U.S. Conference of Organization of Muslims. It's their political party, basically. Council on something.
Muslim organizations, the MO.
Yes, exactly. That is Muslim Brotherhood political party. Mm-hmm. That's their political party in the United States. They've been operating since 2015. Okay. So good on Chip Roy. Good that, praise God, that they're getting some momentum to this. They need to be better educated on what Sharia is and how it's totalitarian, but keep the momentum going, keep the conversation going, and I hope that they get some more traction on this.
Alan, Bridgeport, West Virginia, you're on the air.
Brother Jim, thanks for taking my call. Brother Strom, I wanted to ask you there, in Revelation it says that Persia is going to lead a coalition against Israel, and I'm wondering, anything that we're doing right now, I know that's not going to change anything, but I'm wondering from your angle, I know we're closer to the rapture than ever before, okay? So I'm wondering, I know we want to keep them from getting nuclear weapons and all of that, but what's more important here is we know what the book says, and we'll be raptured before that.
The important thing, and we'll have Shahram comment, the important thing is to occupy till I come. We are to be salt. We are to be earth. We don't know the day of Jesus Christ's return. We ought to occupy till he comes back again. Shahram, your comment.
I agree with that 100%. And the caller is correct. I think he's quoting Ezekiel 38:39, not in the book of Revelation. But, yes, Persia is mentioned as part of that coalition. That will happen. It's God's word. Now, the question, of course, is you got to understand what was the boundary of Persia. The boundary that was given during the time of Ezekiel was probably about 10 to 15 times larger than what modern-day Iran is. But regardless, it is very important to understand that, as Jim said, we don't know the day or the hour. I believe liberated, if Iran is liberated, it could right now be a huge element of the gospel could go out from Iran. Amen. Because there's so many believers Amen. That are inside the country of Iran, fastest growing church numerically. So we don't know the Lord's timing. We know it's going to happen, but we also I'm believing Iran could open up for a time, and many can get saved before it goes into that Gog-Magog coalition you're talking about.
Thank you, Al, for the call. We're going to go to Merle in Tennessee. Merle, you're on the air.
Yeah, Jim. To answer your question about why gas is so high in America, we actually buy and sell on the world market. So that affects our price here. We buy and sell on the world market with our oil. I wish they did keep it here. I wish our refineries would just do it here. but we do buy and sell in the world market. Secondly, Tucker Carlson had a visitation from a demonic spirit. He even admitted it. And I tell you what, he's got a good start in being the false prophet.
Wow.
But that's what I wanted to say, Jim.
Thank you, Merle. Appreciate it. Gene is calling from Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Gene, you're on the air.
Yes, I wanted to know if you were aware that Dr. Michael Youssef, a Christian minister, originally from Egypt and of course, a Muslim, has managed to publish a book called An Unholy Alliance, How Progressivism Brought About an Islamic Invasion. And it also has a comparison in it between Christianity and the beliefs and a whole description of the history of Islam. And that's all I know about Islam, except that for decades now I've been supporting the orphans of Christians.
Great. Thank you, Gene, for the call. And just because of time, we're going to have to move on. Paul in Somerset, Kentucky, our final call today. You're on the air.
Yes, I wanted to ask your guest about Abraham's son, Ishmael. Was this where the Muslim got its start? And also, what year was the Quran wrote?
Okay. And Shahram, we've got a minute and a quarter. Go ahead.
No. Ishmael is, possibly the lineage of Arabs. It's not where Islam started, even though Muhammad claims that he's an Arab. They're from Arabia. But Ishmael has nothing to do with Islam. This is one of the deceptions today, is this idea that Islam is somehow Abrahamic because of Ishmael. Ishmael can simply be traced back to maybe some Arabs, but we have to remember most Arabs on the planet are not Muslim. Second thing is, his question was about, sorry, what was the second question he asked real quick? Was I'm trying to remember now what he said about...
what year was the Quran written?
Nobody knows because it was not written. Muhammad was illiterate. The earliest manuscript that could even be claimed to be from original was 250 years after his revelation that he claims he got in 610. So we're talking about mid-800s before it was ever really codified. So there's no authenticity to the Quran. There's no original sources dating back to the time of Muhammad, and Muhammad was illiterate, and he's also the only person who got revelation of the Quran. That's why nobody should put their faith in the Quran.
Thank you for the call. And by the way, our guest website, Till Ministry, TIL, stands for Truth and Love, tillministry.com. And you can find lots of information there, but if you put a slash in and write the word opposites, you'll find the Christianity versus Islam are indeed polar opposites. Well, we've had a lot on our plate today. Shahram, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jim, as always.
And friends, thank you for joining us here on Crosstalk. Take this information that you have gained. Send the link. It'll be posted on our site here in just a couple of hours. Share it with your social media list as well. God bless you. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.